Hello everyone, how are you all? Hope you all are doing well. So we would be doing what? Returns under GST, returns under GST. Okay. So first we will do what? GSTR1, all the returns under GST would be doing. So GSTR1 is a statement. What? Statement of outward supply. Statement of outward supply. So the person who is registered person who is opting for QRMP scheme, that is quarterly return monthly payment scheme, and if you are a registered person, what is the due date of filing? 13th of the month succeeding tax period. 13th of the month succeeding tax period. For others, the registered person, the due date for GSTR1 is 11th of the month succeeding tax period. 11th of the month succeeding tax period. Now GSTR3B, you remember, GSTR3B is a monthly return for a normal taxpayer, registered person. If your annual turnover is greater than 5 crore in the previous financial year, last financial year, if your annual turnover is greater than 5 crore, then what is your due date? 20th of the month. 20th of the month. But if your annual turnover is less than or equal to 5 crore in the last year, then 22 or 24, depending on the of the month, depending upon the state in which you are registered. Then GSTR4, you remember, this is the return for the taxable person opting for composition levy. Composition persons, this return is okay. So it is a return either for the financial year or part of the year. You have to file the return after the end of the year on 30th April. Like for 24-25, you will file it by 30th April 25. And there's one quarterly statement also. When you will file 18th of the month succeeding the quarter. Okay. So after 18th of the month succeeding the quarter, what you have to furnish? Quarterly statement you have to furnish on 18th of the month succeeding the quarter. Okay. Now next, GSTR5, monthly return for NRTP, non-resident taxable person, the monthly return non-resident taxable person, when you have to furnish 13th of the month succeeding tax period. So after the completion of your month, either on 13th or 7 days after the expiry of registration, whichever is earlier. Then GSTR7, return for tax deductors by 10th of the next month. Then GSTR8 is for e-com operator. By 10th of the next month. Then GSTR9, which is annual return, who has to furnish it? Registered person other than ISD, TDS, TCS, casual taxable person and NRTP. When you have to furnish the annual return, due date of an annual return 31st December of next financial year. Then GSTR 9A is an annual return for the registered person who is paying tax under composition scheme. 9A return, annual return is there, and when they have to furnish 31st December of next financial year. Then 9B is again annual return for e-com operator who is required to collect TCS. For them, the return is what? 9B. When they have to furnish 31st December of next financial year. Then 9C is reconciliation statement. Registered person whose aggregate turnover during a financial year exceeds 5 crore. If you are a registered person, your aggregate turnover exceeds 5 crore. Your aggregate turnover is exceeding 5 crore. Then you have to submit it along with the annual return 9 and 9A. Then GSTR10 final return, taxable person whose registration has been surrendered or cancelled. You are a taxable person whose registration is surrendered or cancelled. In that case, you will furnish which return? GSTR10 within 3 months of the date of cancellation or order of cancellation, whichever is later. Within 3 months of the date of cancellation or order of cancellation, whichever is later. Then GSTR11, it is a detail of inward supply which is to be furnished by UIN. The details of inward supply which is furnished by UIN. Who has to furnish it? Person who is having UIN. Okay, so these are the different returns which different persons have to furnish. Now, QRMP scheme. Quarterly return monthly payment. Okay, so it is an optional return filing scheme. What is it? It is an optional return filing scheme which is introduced for small taxpayer having an aggregate annual turnover up to 5 crore in the current and the preceding financial year. In the last year and in the current year also, up to now your turnover is up to 5 crores, then you can go for quarterly payment monthly, quarterly return monthly payment scheme, QRMP. That means you have to file the returns on a quarterly basis, but payment you have to make on a monthly basis. Payment you have to do on the monthly basis. So QRMP is what? It is a return filing scheme introduced for small taxpayer having an aggregate annual turnover up to 5 crore in the current and preceding financial year. To furnish their form GSTR1 and 3B on the quarterly basis, they will furnish GSTR1 and 3B on the quarterly basis, while they will pay the tax on monthly basis through a simple challan, but they will pay tax on monthly basis through a simple challan. Now, eligibility, who is eligible for this QRMP scheme? Taxpayer having an aggregate turnover up to 5 crore in the preceding financial year. If you are a taxpayer, your aggregate turnover is up to 5 crores in the preceding financial year, then you can very well furnish what? Then where you can very well, you are eligible for QRMP scheme. You are eligible for QRMP scheme. From which date to which date you can exercise this option? Taxpayer can opt for any quarter from first day of the second month of the preceding quarter to the last day of the first month of the quarter. Like for example, for July to September quarter, if you want to opt for the scheme, for July to September quarter, if you want to opt for the scheme, so what is the time period available in which you can exercise this option? Is from first day of second month of preceding quarter. What is the first day of second month of preceding quarter? That is from 1st May till the last day of the first month of the quarter. Last day of the first month of the quarter, that means 31st July. So this is the window available for July to September quarter. If you want to opt for QRMP scheme, then you can definitely opt it from the period 1st May to 31st July. From the period 1st May to 31st July, you can very well opt it. Criteria. What is the criteria? Taxpayer must furnish the last return as on the due date of exercising such option. So here the taxpayer must have furnished what? The last return. The last return must be furnished by this date as on due date of exercising such option. Okay. So the taxpayer must have furnished what? The last return as on due date of the exercising such option. The date when you are exercising the option, you have to furnish the last return. For example, you are exercising the option on, say 10 July. So till 10 July, whatever returns have become due of the earlier period, you have to furnish those returns. Okay. Then option once exercised, taxpayer are not required to exercise option every quarter until they revise the said option. So once you have exercised the option, until and unless you revise that option, you will continue under QRMP scheme only. Migration not relevant now. And IFF invoice details can be filed using in GSTR1 using IFF for first and second month of the quarter. So now the invoices you can furnish using IFF, okay, because the other party has to take the credit. So first quarterly, definitely you will file GSTR1 in quarter, but there is an option, if you want, you can file IFF for first and second month. IFF, okay, invoice furnishing facility, on the basis of which you will furnish the invoice, and the other person can what? Other person can take the credit on the basis of the IFF you have furnished, okay. So what will be the impact of QRMP scheme? It will definitely reduce what? The compliance burden, because now the taxpayer have to file only 4 3B instead of 12 3Bs. Now they have to furnish only 4 3B instead of 12 3B. Similarly, they would be required only to file 4 GSTR1. Now they will furnish 4 GSTR1 since IFF is provided under this scheme. Since IFF is provided, they have to furnish only 4 GSTR1, okay. Next, registered person debarred from furnishing GSTR1 IFF. When is registered person debarred? He is not allowed to furnish GSTR1 or IFF. When first, if he has not furnished 3B, in the preceding month. In the last month you have not furnished 3B, then you are not allowed to furnish GSTR1 in the current month. Then you are a registered person who has opted for QRMP scheme. You have opted for QRMP scheme, and now you have not furnished. You are not allowed to furnish GSTR1 if you have not furnished 3B for the preceding tax period. Last tax period you have not furnished 3B. Of last quarter you have not furnished 3B. Then an intimation has been sent under 88C. 88C we would be seeing in detail in some time. So intimation has been sent to you in 88C, and you have neither deposited the amount nor furnished a reply, so in that case also you are also not allowed to furnish GSTR1. Then intimation has been sent to you under 88D and intimation has been sent to you under 88D, then you are not allowed to furnish GSTR1 if what, if you have not, again, if you have not what, you have not paid the amount of excess ITC, you have not paid the amount of excess ITC, or you have not furnished a reply, or you have not furnished a reply. So neither you have paid the amount nor you have furnished the reply. In that case also, if an intimation has been sent to you under 88D, you are not allowed to furnish GSTR1. And then you are not allowed to furnish GSTR1 if you have not furnished details of bank account as per 10A. You have not furnished details of bank account as per 10A, then also you are not allowed to furnish what, GSTR1 or IFF. Okay. Now next. So in these cases you are not debarred from furnishing details of outward supply in GSTR1 or IFF, okay. Next, annual return up till when you have to file, 31st December of the next financial year. It is in this return, taxpayer need to furnish what, details of expenditure and income of the entire financial year. It may also include self-certified reconciliation statement. When it will include self-certified reconciliation statement? When your aggregate turnover during a financial year exceeds 5 crore, then you are required to furnish what, self-certified reconciliation statement also. So whenever your aggregate turnover during a financial year, which year? The year to which return you are furnishing, okay. So in that year your aggregate turnover exceeds 5 crore rupees, then you are also required to furnish self-certified reconciliation statement along with annual return also. What it will reconcile? It will reconcile value of supply as per returns, with value of supply as per audited financial statement, okay. And what is the exception who are not required to furnish annual return? Any department of central government, state government, local authority, local authority whose books of accounts are subject to audit by CAG, they are not required to furnish what, annual return. Now next is revision of return. What is this? We'll see. The mechanism of filing revised return for any correction error has been done away with. Now the rectification of error omission is allowed in the subsequent returns, okay. So there is no concept of revised return under GST. If you want to do any kind of rectification, that you can do in amendment table in the next return. No rectification is allowed. So this is written, the rectification is allowed in subsequent returns. Whatever subsequent returns you are furnishing, in that you can do the rectification of the earlier period. No rectification is allowed. Up to which period the rectification is allowed, we'll see. So no rectification is allowed after 30th November following the end of financial year to which such detail pertains, or furnishing of annual return, whichever is earlier. So no rectification is allowed after 30th November following the end of financial year to which the detail pertains, or furnishing of annual return, whichever is earlier, okay. So no rectification is allowed after 30th November following the end of financial year to which such detail pertains. So for example, for 24-25, up till when you can do the rectification, either 30th November 25 or furnishing of annual return, whichever is earlier. So if you have furnished the annual return on 15th August 25, then 15th August. But if you have furnished the return on, say, 31st December 25, then in that case 30th November or 31st December, whichever is earlier, which is 30th November, okay. Next, default in furnishing return. A notice in prescribed form shall be issued electronically to a registered person who fails to furnish return. So obviously, whenever you fails to furnish a return, a notice is being issued to you. Electronically to the registered person who fails to furnish the return, okay, any of these return, and the notice will require him to furnish return within how many days? Within 15 days. Within 15 days you have to furnish the return. Failing which, liability will be assessed under section 62 based on relevant material available with the proper officer. In addition to tax so assessed, applicable interest and penalty will be applicable. So in addition to tax, applicable interest and penalty will also be available. Okay. Now Late fees levied in case of delay in filing return. Now if you are delaying the return, so now if you are delaying, for example, GSTR 1, 3B, 4, 7 or 9, for them there are specific late fees. In which cases, if you are delaying GSTR 1 or 3B or GSTR 4 or 7 or 9. So if you are delaying GSTR 1, 3B, 4, 7 and 9, there are specific late fees. Other returns, if you are delaying, for example, GST 8 you are delaying, so in that case this late fees is applicable. So this late fees is applicable in all the cases other than GSTR 1, 3B, 4, 7 and 9. In all the other returns, this is the late fees. Okay. So what is the general late fees we will see? So if you are delaying, for example, TCS statement, you are delaying final return, so this will be applicable. So what is that? What is the quantum of late fees? 200 total, 100 under CGST, 100 under SGST, 200 under IGST. So we will talk about total only now. 200 every day during which such default continues, or 10,000 rupees, whichever is lower. Okay, so 200 rupees, if 200 rupees, that is 100 plus 100, 200 rupees, 100 plus 100, okay, or 10,000 rupees, whichever is lower, okay. So what is the late fees, quantum of late fees? It will be 200 rupees, 100 plus 100 for every day during which such default continues, 200 rupees every day for which such default continues, or 10,000 rupees, whichever is lower, okay. Next, GSTR 1. Now if you are delaying GSTR 1 or 3B, what is the late fees, that we'll discuss, okay. So now if you are dealing with GSTR 1 or 3B. So now if you are dealing GSTR 1 or 3B and you are a registered person, your outward supply is nil or your tax payable is nil. Either your outward supply is nil or your tax payable is nil, then 500 rupees or 20 rupees per day during which such default continues, whichever is lower. 500 rupees or 20 rupees per day. 500 rupees or 20 rupees per day during which such default continues, whichever is lower. Now we are again, I am telling you, from now we would be talking about total CGST plus SGST. In exam you have to see what they have asked. They have asked you CGST penalty, SGST penalty, total penalty, IGST penalty, what they have asked. Accordingly you have to answer. Okay. So here, if you are a registered person, if your outward supply is nil, or the tax payable is nil, either your outward supply is nil or your tax payable is nil, what would be the late fees? 500 rupees, or 20 rupees per day during which such default continues, or 20 rupees per day during which such default continues, whichever is lower is the late fees, Now if you are a registered person other than one, above, and whose aggregate turnover is less than equal to 1.5 CR in the preceding financial year, and your aggregate turnover is less than equal to 1.5 CR in the preceding financial year. In that case, 2,000 rupees or 50 rupees per day during which such failure continues, whichever is lower, okay. So if you are a registered person other than one above and your aggregate turnover is less than equal to 1.5 CR, in that case 2000 rupees or 50 rupees per day. 2000 rupees or 50 rupees per day during which such failure continues, whichever is lower. Now if you are a registered person, other than one above, that means you have some, outward supply, or if you have some tax payable, so other than one above, and your aggregate turnover is more than 1.5 CR but less than equal to 5 crore. Your aggregate turnover is more than 1.5 CR and less than equal to 5 CR. In that case, what is the late fees? 5,000 rupees, or 50 rupees per day during which such failure continues, whichever is lower. And if you are a registered person, your aggregate turnover is more than 5 CR. You are a registered person, your aggregate turnover is more than 5 CR. In that case, 10,000 rupees or 50 rupees per day during which such failure continues, whichever is lower. So 10,000 rupees or 50 rupees per day during which such failure continues, whichever is lower, okay. So this is the late fees in different scenarios, okay, of GSTR 1 or 3B. So quickly we will revise. If your outward supply is nil or your tax payable is nil, then 500 rupees or 20 rupees per day, whichever is lower. But other than this, if your aggregate turnover is less than equal to 1.5 CR, other than this means, that means you have some outward supply or you have some tax payable, then 2000 rupees or 50 rupees, whichever is lower. 2000 rupees or 50 rupees, whichever is lower. If your aggregate turnover is more than 1.5 crore but less than equal to 5 crore, then in that case 5000 rupees or 50 rupees per day, 5000 rupees or 50 rupees per day, whichever is lower. And if your aggregate turnover is more than 5 crore, then 10,000 rupees or 50 rupees per day, or 50 rupees per day, whichever is lower. So in the first case only it is 20 rupees per day, rest 3 cases 50 rupees per day, and the ad hoc limit is different in all the cases. Okay. Next, if you are delaying GSTR 4, what you are delaying? GSTR 4. So in that case, what we have to see? Let's see. So if you are delaying GSTR 4, then you have to see what is the total tax payable. The total tax payable in GSTR 4 is nil. So the total tax payable in GSTR 4 is nil. In that case, 500 rupees or 20 rupees per day during which such failure continues. 500 rupees or 20 rupees per day during which such failure continues, whichever is lower. Whichever is lower. Okay. So in case of GSTR 4, what we have to see? If your GSTR 4 is nil, then 500 rupees or 20 rupees per day during which such failure continues, whichever is lower, or 20 rupees per day during which such failure continues, whichever is lower, is the late fees. What? 500 rupees or 20 rupees per day, or 20 rupees per day, whichever is lower. But if you are a registered person other than the class of registered person who is covered under one above, in that case 2000 rupees or 50 rupees per day during which such failure continues, whichever is lower. 2000 rupees or 50 rupees, whichever is lower. 2000 rupees or 50 rupees per day, whichever is lower. Next. For delay in filing annual return, GSTR 9. For delay in filing annual return, GSTR 9. So now, if you are a registered person, your aggregate turnover is less than equal to 5 crore. You are a registered person, your aggregate turnover is less than equal to 5 crore. In that case, 50 rupees or 0.04% of turnover in the state or union territory. You remember we have studied the definition of turnover in the state or union territory. So 50 rupees per day or 0.04% of turnover in the state or union territory, whichever is lower. Whichever is lower is what is the late fees. Next, if you are a registered person having aggregate turnover is greater than 5 crores but less than equal to 20 crore. So you are a registered person whose aggregate turnover is greater than 5 crore but less than equal to 20 crore. In that case, 100 rupees per day. 100 rupees per day or 0.04% of the turnover in the state or union territory, whichever is lower. Or 0.04% of the turnover in the state or union territory, whichever is lower, is what? Is the late fees. Okay, so if your turnover is greater than 5 crore but less than equal to 20 crores, in that case 100 rupees per day or 0.04% of the turnover in the state or union territory, whichever is lower, is the late fees. And if you are a registered person having turnover of more than 20 crores, then in that case 200 rupees or 0.5% of the turnover in the state or union territory, whichever is lower, or 0.5% of turnover in the state or union territory, whichever is lower, is the late fees. Okay, so so if you are a registered person whose aggregate turnover is less than equal to 5 crore, then 50 rupees per day or 0.4% of the turnover in the state or union territory, whichever is lower. If your turnover is between 5 crore to 20 crore, then 100 rupees per day and 0.04% of the turnover in the state or union territory, whichever is lower. But if your turnover is more than 20 crore, then 200 rupees per day or 0.5% of the turnover in the state or union territory, whichever is lower. So in first two cases, the turnover in the union territory or state, how much they are taking? 0.04. But if your aggregate turnover is more than 20 crores, then see how much they have increased it, from 0.04 to 2.5 of the turnover in the state or union territory. Okay, so this many a times in exam they ask you this particular point. Then next, if you are delaying GSTR 7, then 50 rupees or 2000 rupees, 50 rupees per day or 2000 rupees, whichever is lower, is the late fees. So these are the different late fees in case of GSTR 1, 3B, 4, 7 and 9. Okay, rest all cases we have seen that general late fees is given, that will be applicable. Now, can you file GSTR 1 and 3B, nil GSTR 1 and 3B by SMS? Yes, there is a facility given. GSTR 1 and 3B nil return you can file through SMS also. That is also not a problem. You can definitely file it through the SMS. Okay. Next, taxpayer to be intimated difference in liability in form GSTR 1 and 3B and requested to pay differential or explain the difference. Rule 88C. Rule 88C. Now, the tax payable, for example, as per GSTR 1, tax payable is 5 lakh. But in 3B, you have actually paid only 5,000. So, there is a substantial difference, then government will send you intimation. So, in GSTR 1, you have shown that tax payable is 5 lakh rupees. Okay, you have uploaded the invoice, the other person have taken the credit also. Now, at the time when there is actual liability to pay tax at the time of 3B, you have shown that the tax as only 5,000 and paid 5,000. So, there is a difference. So, what the government will send you? They will send you intimation to pay the difference in tax liability along with interest or explain the difference So, you have to either deposit the amount or you have to furnish a reply. Up till when you don't do this, you are not allowed to furnish what GSTR1 or IFF. You are debarred from furnishing GSTR1 or IFF. Now, next intimation is under 88D. This is regarding what? Difference in ITC. 88C is regarding difference in tax liability. 88C is difference in ITC as available in auto-generated statement containing details of ITC and that available in return prescribed. 88D. So, now there is a difference in ITC. There is a difference in ITC. So, in GSTR, for example, in GSTR 2B, the ITC comes to 5 lakh rupees. 5 lakh rupees. But in 3B, you have availed say 50 lakhs rupees. So, there is a difference. So, obviously, government will send you the intimation. What is the difference? So, they will send you the intimation and they will say that the difference, this is the difference, and they will direct you either to pay the amount of excess ITC availed, or explain the difference, within a period of 7 days. Within a period of 7 days, either you have to pay the excess ITC or you have to explain the reasons. So, pay an amount or explain the difference within a period of 7 days. Such registered person, and upon receipt of intimation, either he will pay or he will furnish a reply within a period of 7 days. Where any amount is specified remains to be paid within 7 days, and where no reason explanation is furnished or where the explanation furnished is not acceptable by the officer, so in that case the amount will be demanded according to 73-74. So, now if either you have not paid the amount or you have not explained the difference or your explanation is not justified, explanation is not acceptable by the officer, in that case he will demand you the amount as per 73-74. Okay, so in 88D they will intimate you difference in ITC that you have to either pay or explain the difference. In 88C they will intimate you difference in tax liability that you have to either pay or explain the difference. So, here we complete returns chapter and this marathon revision beta, and I hope this revision series is very helpful for you. We have almost in 8 hours completed almost everything, 100% coverage we have done in this marathon series. It is very important. Please share it with your friends, and now most important thing, keep high level of confidence and motivation for the exam. That is only the key to success. Okay, so we'll stop our discussion over here beta. Thank you for now.